Hello, dear friends. This is Jana. Tonight we have the honor of having a friend of us to do our monthly talk. I will start with the reading from the book Happy Life, message 68, and then I'll follow with the prayer and we will invite our friend George. Message 68. When you are ignorant about a subject, just say so. You are not expected to know everything. Honestly, regarding one's limitations is much appreciated. Even when you are already informed about what someone is trying to tell you, listen patiently. It will give you the chance to compare it with what you already know, enhancing or rectifying it. People who come across as very well informed oftentimes have knowledge that is only skin deep. Listening is always profitable. So, what a great invitation so we can have, good ears and listen patiently. I would like to invite all of you to do our opening prayer. Heavenly Father, Master Jesus, tonight as we start our meeting, we ask that you may inspire our friend George, who is helping us bringing such important topic for tonight. Our friend is in Brazil, and we want to also thank him and show gratitude for his time and effort on being here with us. We ask that every single person who is joining us tonight, or the ones that will watch this later, that they may have their home filled with love, health, and harmony. And may all of us be touched by tonight's message. We ask you again, inspire our friend so he can deliver the best of his knowledge. Thank you, and so be it.
Evening, everyone. I'm George, and I'm very happy to be here with you this evening. And it's a first for me doing a talk in English, so um, certainly we will be all um, helped by our friends and by everyone. And this topic is very special because I think we are living through a moment of many um changes and challenges, and we really have to um, lean on our hope to get us through these times. It's exactly in the dark moments of life that we remember that hope is there to help us. Sometimes we go through moments of difficulty alone, like when we lose a loved one, or when we have a financial problem or a health problem, and this is something that we go through by ourselves. But there are also other moments when we go through difficulties, challenges together, you know, like a family going through together through a difficulty, or a group, or even a nation. And in these moments, we need hope. We need hope to get us through these dark moments. And the first thing I would mention about hope is that hope is not exactly a gift. No, hope is something that we have to develop, something that it's an acquisition. And for that, we need to work inside ourselves to really have hope as a virtue, as a habit. And sometimes it's easier to define a virtue by what it is not, by the vice, the corresponding vice. And I think that in these dark moments, we feel very distressed. We fear things. Sometimes we don't know why things are going the way they are, and we cannot find the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like a dead end. I don't know what to do. So we despair. And in this moment, really, we have to summon all our faith and energy to really have hope. And talking about hope, I remember an old story from ancient Greece, and that is the story of Prometheus. In Greek, Prometheus means the one that thinks properly, that thinks ahead. So, in short, it's Prometheus was a smart guy, and he was so smart that he was able to steal the fire from the gods. Until then, only the gods could yield fire. Humankind couldn't make fire by themselves. And from that moment on, human beings started a journey of knowledge, of progress, of technology. But Prometheus paid dearly for his deed, because the gods were very angry at him, and he was sentenced to perpetual torture. And the story later goes is Hercules saves him, but this is another story. But Prometheus had a brother, and his brother was called Epimetheus. And Epimetheus in Greek means exactly the opposite from Prometheus. So Epimetheus didn't think very well. He didn't think properly. He was very impulsive, reactive, and well, in short, maybe he was a bit dumb. And the gods weren't really happy with the sentence they gave to Prometheus. They wanted revenge from humankind. So they devised a plan. And that plan was to create the perfect woman, the woman that had all gifts. And that woman was called Pandora. And Prometheus told his brother Epimetheus not to accept any gifts from the gods. But when he saw Pandora, he couldn't resist. So he accepted her. And together with Pandora, the gods gave her a box. And that's the Pandora's box. And they told her under any circumstance to open that box. Okay, so she joined in marriage Epimetheus and brought that box along. And one day she couldn't resist her curiosity, and she opened the box just a little bit. And just as she opened the box, all the evils that have plagued humankind ever since got off of that box. War, famine, disease, death, all the things you can imagine, all the bad things. And she got frightened and scared, and she closed the box right away. And there was only one thing inside the box that remained, and that was hope. So this is how ancient Greeks explain how hope is the resource that we humans have to deal with all the evils that surround us. So furthermore, here's Alcyone. Alcyone is a character from a romance, a book that Emmanuel wrote called Renunciation. She was a spirit already well developed, and she even didn't have to live in Earth anymore. She lived in another world, a happy world. But she had loved ones here, and she came back in this life. And for that, she had to renounce all the good things she already was entitled to. But she would say this: living without hope is the greatest of all evils. because it is the strength of life, that which gives us meaning, the stimulus for our journey. So she, with this saying, she reminds us of the power of hope, and that hope, in a way, also is an understanding of what life is really all about. And if we have the broader, the correct understanding, we are able to cope with difficult situations and get through with our journey, which of course she needed, because I recommend reading the book. It's a very interesting story. And here's Paul, St. Paul, writing to the Corinthians and reminding us that we should have faith, hope, and charity. And of course, emphasizing that charity is the greatest of all these virtues that we should nourish in our lives. So to talk about hope, it's almost impossible not to talk about faith and charity at the same time. And we're going to do that right away. And interestingly, faith, hope, and charity, for me, it's a way of summing up Jesus's teachings, because these form three pillars of what Jesus has taught us. The first one, which is faith, has to do with our relationship with God. The second one, which is hope, has to do with our belief, in eternal life, and thirdly, charity has to do with the commandment of love. So we will explore a little bit of each one, so we can understand how to nourish hope in our lives. So the first one is faith. And every time we talk about faith, usually we associate this with a belief system. But faith here in this case is not a belief system. It's the trust we have in a relationship. And this is a special relationship, is the relationship with God. And there's a book called Workers of the Life Eternal that has a very interesting piece where this spirit comes to visit the people in the astral city, our home, nosso lar. And he is so, he's already in a very high rank spiritually. So he has to materialize in this astral city, and he's contained in a what might be a glass environment just for him. And from there, he answers the questions. And it's funny, the story, because nobody knows what to ask him. He's so wise, so developed. But finally, someone has the courage to ask something, and they say, "How can we keep our happiness, throughout the work we have to do?" And he says that trust in divine power is the basis of Christian joy, which we must never lose. So here he says clearly that faith is what should fuel us through life, give us energy, so we can always be joyful no matter what happens. And when we talk about relationship with God, it's very important we understand how he works in our lives. And there's a saying, at least here where I live, which says that God writes straight with crooked lines. That's a popular saying here for us. And I always have trouble with this because I always think, well, if God is perfect, everything he does is straight. It's a line, a straight line. So what might be behind this is that our understanding of what happens is that make it look crooked, because we don't always understand why is it that things happen the way they happen to us. And usually we go about life without paying much attention to that. But it is usually when we face dark moments, when we face difficulties, when in a way we think we lose, that we start asking ourselves, why is this really happening to me? How's my relationship to God? I used to play tennis in my early years. I can't play anymore, but this poster here always followed me in my games. And it says it doesn't matter if you win or lose until you lose. And that's when we get mad at life. We get even mad at God. We say, "Oh, how come this is happening to me? This is not fair." That's, I would say, our natural reaction. And I would remind myself every time I go in there in this way that there are two rules we always have to follow in our relationship with God. There are two rules then. The first rule, God is sovereignly just and good. Okay? So God is the perfect being. He is fair, and he is all goodness. So this is the first rule. The second rule, if you think God was not fair or not good for you, go back to rule number 1. So something I did not understand if I think he was not fair or not good. So the spirits have taught us that we are in a world to learn, not to suffer, to learn. And that sometimes that learning means having to go through challenging or difficult moments. So the idea is that going through that, we are going to learn, we are going to grow, and we are going to be a better person after that. So sometimes we forget this. It's like a child in school and having to make, to do his homework or something that he doesn't like or she doesn't like. But we will not. We as parents, we're not going to take them out of the school because they're not happy with this. We're going to help them, or to learn and be able to do the homework, because we want them to grow, we want them to learn, we want them to be better people. So that the same, in relation to God and us. And we can always talk to God. And this is a talk for us in our state or in our stage of evolution, where God answers us in different ways. It's not like he is going to talk to us like I'm talking to you right now, but he's going to talk to us through other people, through the situations in life, even in our thoughts inside our heads. But here's a story that we tell very often to understand how God answers our prayers, and that is of this guy who's in a flood. Now, before the flood started, they had the news that the river would rise, and a car passes by and calls him, "No, come with us. No, you know that there's a flood coming." And he said, No. I talked to God, and he's going to save me. And he stayed there, And after a few days, the flood started, and the river, the level water is halfway his house, and there comes a boat, and the people in the boat said, "Come with us, save yourself." And he said, "No, no, no, no problem. I already talked to God, and He's going to save me." And when he was almost drowning, there's a helicopter comes along. And the people there say, "Well, come with us." And he said, "No, no, no, not necessarily, because God is going to save me." And end of story, he drowned. He drowned, and he goes to the spiritual world, and he has a talk to God and said, "Well, God, I asked you to save me. Why didn't you?" And God told him, "Well, I send you a car, then I send you a boat, then I send you a helicopter." And you didn't pay attention. So, of course, in that relationship, we can ask, but of course, we have to do our part as well. And we have to understand the ways that God answered to us. And just to close this first part, talking about faith, remembering, as in the Gospels, that ask and it shall be given you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open unto you. I think this is a summary of what our relationship has to be to God, is to trust Him, but at the same time, do our part. But if we have already developed faith, here's what Emmanuel has to tell us about what's faith and what's hope. He says the following: the light of the sun is faith. That energy, warm, really makes everything bright and clear. And he says the light of the moon and stars is the light of hope. So this is the reflex of the sun, in the moon and the tiny stars in the night sky that help us through the night, help us through the dark moments, knowing that the following day the sun will be back. So this is always the hope we have when we face darkness. And I think that the hope that we as Christians and Spiritists have is based on what Jesus have showed us and demonstrated with his resurrection. Because one of the messages he had for us was that of the eternal life, that life goes on forever, that we never die. And he came back to show us that exactly. And here is an image of him showing himself to Mary Magdalene. And as Paul writes down, and that he was buried and that he rose again the third day. So this is something that is part of our faith, but it also informs our hope, because when we look at life in a more of a materialistic perspective, it's very difficult to have hope in certain circumstances, because there's nothing else after life. So if you lose a loved one, it's gone forever. If your life, you have to live with a health condition, there you are. That's the life you have, the only one. And if you have difficult people, that's all the challenge and difficulties you have, that have nowhere to go, and no reason to do differently from what you do every day. So having this understanding that life doesn't end, and more than that, that we are here actually learning, and that we have to learn to love others, and that in doing so, actually, we are closer to happiness, we're closer to God. it's something that we are, as Christians and as Spiritists, have to nourish our hope. And if in Christianity, Jesus spoke about eternal life, this has become very, very straightforward for us in Spiritism. And here's Allan Kardec saying that Spiritism is founded on the existence of an invisible world made up of incorporeal beings who populate space. So we know that we're never alone. We're always surrounded by other beings, and that our loved ones are never lost forever. They're only in a different realm where we certainly will be able to meet them when we cross there as well. And in fact, every day, because as we think, we have their presence, and as we dream, we have the ability to be with them as well. So this I find, particularly myself, very comforting, because nothing is lost. And everything that I go through, if I go through with this mindset of learning, actually is something worthwhile. So what makes us have this hope in Spiritism is what Kardec says here. Now, true Spiritists see the things of this world from a much higher point of view. They seem tiny and petty to them in light of the future awaiting them. Now, we think about at 8 years life, 90 years life, like a lot, but this is nothing in the, if we consider the eternity that the spirit life encompasses. So it's very, very, very little. There's a story of a guy that had the opportunity to talk to God directly, face to face. And he asked God, what's a billion years to you? And God answers, oh, son, it's like a second. And then he think over a little bit more and said, and God, what's $1 billion for you? He answered, oh, it's like a 1 cent. And he think a little bit more and he said, can you give me a cent? And God said, wait a second, son. And well, that's the story. So we have a very different perspective when we see things from the spiritual way. What really seems to take it too long or be too difficult. From a spiritual view, it's much, much lighter. So another thing that might help us nourish hope is what I call mental hygiene. It's very interesting that by the time Kardec was working with the spirits, middle of the 19th century, another scientist, which was Louis Pasteur, discovered an invisible world, a microscopic invisible world of microorganisms. He was asked to see into a problem in a brewery, and he decided to put a drop of beer under the microscope, and he saw in that drop of beer, a multitude of beings that until then were not known, and usually are invisible to the human eye. And these little beings were at the same time good for us as those that live inside our intestines, but they can also be bad to us, other bacteria that can, uh, uh, in a way, uh, do harm to our health. And it's interesting because the spiritual world is also invisible, and the spiritual beings are all around us. And depending on how we tune to them, these beings can help us, or they can, in a way, harm us as well. So the mental hygiene is the same thing as the physical hygiene that Louis Pasteur taught us. How do I make that my mental state is such that I will not invite any bad things, no bad feelings, no bad ideas, no bad thoughts to myself. Because when I do that, I can turn myself more gloomy, more distressed, and of course, hope will give way to other negative feelings. So it's very important that we cultivate this mental hygiene whenever we see ourselves going to a negative tune, that we try to either move from where we are, read something that's inspiring, talk to someone that can help us, or do something good, just to keep our mental health. And also to nourish love, we can always remember this, that we should always watch and pray, because this tuning is something that requires a certain presence. Because if we let ourselves get into an automatic mood, now we can see ourselves very fast, very rapidly in a different state of mind. And praying out is always a way to reconnect with the higher, the spiritual realm. And here's a story of Chico Xavier, and he had an important mission, but he wasn't without difficulties in his life. He wasn't rich. He wasn't good looking. He had many different health situations throughout his life. And of course, the people around him, not everyone was exactly perfect. And there was an instance where one of his relatives tried to take advantage of his fame, and he was very, very sad. And even Chico Xavier could put himself in a sad state for a while. And Emmanuel, who was his guardian, he was his mentor, seeing him in this situation, asked him what's going on, and he explained what the situation was. And he said, I can't get out of this now. So could maybe Mother Mary have something to tell me, that can help me in this situation? And Emmanuel said, well, I'll see what I can do. And he disappeared. And after a while, he came back, and Chico Xavier was eager to know, do you have anything for me from Mary of Nazareth? And he said, yes, I do. And what it is? And he said, this too shall pass. And he was, oh yes, of course, this will pass. It's just temporary. And he was very happy, and now he was almost euphoric. And Emmanuel told him, this joy you're feeling now, this too shall pass. So be careful. And I told this story because we will always have ups and downs in life. It's how much we can really keep a steady state, no matter if things are good or things are bad. The other thing, I usually use this. I remember this phrase when I go to the dentist. I say, "Ooh, today's day is the day I have to go to the dentist." So I have to spend 1 hour, 2 hours there. No, it's not pleasant, but this too shall pass. So just to wrap up this block of talking about hope, I like to bring Viktor Frankl, which you might know was a psychologist, psychiatrist in Germany, and he was in a concentration camp where he lost all his family, but he was able to survive, and after that he had a very prolific life. But one of the things he wrote was about meaning, and he said that despair is suffering without purpose. And that, to mean that when we have a purpose, when we have meaning in our lives, we can look at these situations where things are exactly how we wanted them to be in a different way, in a different light, with more hope, with faith, and with the energy to get through what we need to get through. And thus, we have to. Hope is always associated to nature and to life, to being born or reborn, and the color of green. And I like to remember Jesus calling us, as in this passage, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." So that the understanding that we are not alone, never alone, that spirituality is always beside us to help us, especially in the difficult moments, and that we will get through, because this is a temporary situation that we have to face in order to grow as a spirit. But I have to, before we wrap up, just to touch on charity, because, as you know, faith and hope is not enough if we don't do something with this. All this energy, all this understanding, if we don't put this in a useful way, it's like wasting all that resource, wasting all that talent. So it's very important that we are a conduct for love. This is a saying from John in his first letter, where he says that God is love, and that if we dwell in God, God will be in me. So that's an idea of communion. So when we set us to do good to others, it's like now we are acting in the name of God. It's like we are connected to that source of love and energy. And each gesture, each action that we do is like all this energy, all this love is going through us and to the other people. So again, here Viktor Frankl says that if we already know that life has a meaning, we also realize that we are useful to each other. And to be human being is to work for something beyond oneself. And it's very interesting that human being is the only being defined by by a verb, being human. So being human is really doing God's will. And here is the the first commandment of love. No? Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And with that, I would like to wrap up with one more passage of the Gospels. And this is one also that speaks of dark moments. And Jesus summoned his apostles to cross the lake so he can preach on the other side. So they take the boat and they start the journey. And as they start the journey, Jesus starts to sleep. And as he sleeps, a storm starts to gather. And now the clouds turn dark, the wind blows ever much stronger, and the waves start to hit the boat, and and the boat starts to turn to side to side, and the apostles start to get scary, frightened, and Jesus is there but sleeping, and they talk to each other if they should wake up Jesus because they are about to drown. And finally they wake up Jesus, and Jesus stands on the boat and orders the storm to stop, and the storm stops immediately, and so everybody is okay again. And we could talk about this story, trying to understand the powers of Christ over nature, but I would like to bring a different interpretation here, more of a symbolic interpretation, because we can consider this boat and the apostles inside this boat as being ourselves. Sometimes we have to cross something, we have to go on a journey like the life we have. And when Jesus sleeps inside ourselves, everything around us seems very menacing, very threatening, like a storm where we can even die in that storm. But as soon as we wake up Jesus inside ourselves, as soon as we reconnect with God, as soon as we nourish our hope, as soon as we think and do good, all the problems go, not that they go away, but they don't have that same dimension, the threatening dimension that they had before. And we understand that we can cope with them. So this is how I would like to end my talk to you this evening. And I would invite you again for a prayer so we can finish our activity. And let us now connect to our Heavenly Father, our brother and Master Jesus, all our spiritual friends, and ask them for their blessing, that Jesus can be awakened in our lives, that we can nourish hope, so that the night that we might be facing become less dark, and that the storm that we are going through appears to be less frightening, and that we with all trust and confidence be sure that a new sunrise will happen to us sooner than later. May it be so. Have a good week, everyone.